you have to be able to adapt as a coach to the needs of what your athletes need, especially if you want them to wrestle at a high level at the most important time. I always stress every single day, energy and enthusiasm, two things you can control. I've been in this conference long enough now. I've been around these coaches. They're the most competitive people in the world. And I mean that. I truly mean that. This is the $1 million question. Sometimes, and the fans don't like to hear this, sometimes it's resting your student athletes so they're at the best last 3 days of March. I always wanted to train. I always wanted to wrestle. I always wanted to drill. I never want to miss a practice. I'm wrestling 160s down at state. I'm like, what does that mean?
Six Flags, yay or nay?
Yes. Stuck into it my whole childhood. Under the fence, through the swamps, got in for free every time. This is Scott Goodale, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio.
When you were at Jackson, did you ever have a vision of being a college coach? Was that even on your radar?
No, my whole life was about going back to Jackson. That's all I ever wanted to do. I was going to coach wrestling. Obviously, I was into football. That's all I ever wanted to do was to go back to my alma mater and just build this powerhouse program. And we got it to the point where we were pretty good, and some opportunities happened. Long story short, over a couple bottles of wine with my wife, I drew up a 5-point plan, only because Rutgers was on the verge. They were trying to do some things different with the wrestling program. You know, maybe they were going to cut the program. The coach Sachi, prior to me, saved that from happening. And then it was how to make Rutgers wrestling a really big deal. And I just drew up a 5-point plan. The 5-point plan wasn't necessarily for me. It wasn't an interview process or anything like that. I just put some thoughts down on paper of what I thought Rutgers needed to do to get this thing to a certain level that it could compete. And the next thing I know, I was on a 6-hour interview in the middle of the summer. So that's kind of how it happened. I know it was never my dream, never my goal to be a college coach. Was very, very fortunate to be at Jackson. We had some really good teams that were, ranked 3rd in the country. The last year I was there, 4th in the country the year prior to that. So maybe because of that, they kind of reached out and, one thing led to another. And here we are 16 years later.
Being at 16 years later, Coach, trajectory that you're on, was that what you envisioned? Did you think it was going to take longer? Did you think maybe it didn't happen fast enough? How was that for you?
Actually, yeah, I didn't think it happened fast enough, to be honest with you. I was pretty dumb. I said some things maybe I started talking about winning a national championship, right out of the gate. And we had the number 3 recruiting class in the country. I thought this was going to be easy. Little did I know it's a lot harder than one recruiting class, right? It has to happen every single year. So the vision was always there. I truly believed we were going to win. I truly believed we were going to win at a high level, and we have. But as you guys know, it's all about that national tournament. And we didn't see success the first 4 or 5 years, and we had some great wrestlers. And when I mean success, I don't mean success from a dual meet standpoint. Heck, we won 20, 21, 22 dual meets every single year. We just weren't having the All-Americans. So in our sport, that's what that's about. At the end of the year, you got to have All-Americans and champs. And so that probably took a little bit longer than I would have liked, but always had that vision that Rutgers wrestling was going to be, right there in the thick of it at the end of the year. And sure enough, 2019, we crowned 2 national champions, and that was a pretty special night. So we got it to that point. And then right away, the next step is how can we get better? And, I don't want to say we haven't been able to sustain it, but we haven't got to the point where we've had 2 national champs. It's a hard thing to do, but really a long-winded way of answering your question is I would have liked to have that happen faster, but it does take time. It takes time to build something really special. It has taken time. We've been patient, and some good things have happened, and we're trying to get it to an even higher level.
How, coming into the NCAA Division I, and then soon later thereafter the Big Ten, as coming from the high school ranks, how were you received? I know there's some heated battles with you and some of the guys in the short conferences coaches, and maybe behind the curtains, you guys were a little bit more friendly than sometimes you may have appeared on the floor at the conference and stuff. But how was that coming from the high school ranks, getting into the college ranks? How did the other coaches?
It was never as far as the coaches in New Jersey, it was what they kind of wanted. I got a lot of help from coaches in the shore. And I've always had that support. I still feel like 16 years later, heck, I have that support. The heated battles are just that. They're battles in the moment. You know, we put in a lot of time in this sport and we worked year round. So going to battle, especially in our conference, the A South was really rich in wrestling. Heck, the Shore Conference was really rich in wrestling, you know, back then in the early 2000s. So those were relationships I have to this day, and some of the people I count on to this day, not only in recruiting, but just to talk wrestling and philosophies and things like that. And then as far as the wrestling goes, I always believed wrestling was wrestling. I was very, very fortunate to coach some really talented guys, not only from the teams at Jackson, but guys in the Shore, Team New Jersey guys that would go on and win collegiate national championships. So for me, the wrestling part was probably the easiest part. Wrestling was wrestling, and we ran our room just basically the way we ran it at Jackson. And, you know, we got our guys in great shape, really, really tough. And then the technique kind of took care of itself, where we brought some people in, and we've always worked on technique, but always leaned on the high school coaches, especially in the area. But as I've gotten more into it, it's been the whole state, and now it's even gone outside the state. So they're a huge support system for me. They have been from day one, and it certainly made the transition easier. Again, it was never really about wrestling. It was always about recruiting and academics and a home fan base and building this thing up where it could be absolutely special enough where every little kid growing up wants to wrestle for Rutgers. And that's always where I wanted it to be. And I needed the help from those high school coaches.
Talking about the wrestling being the easy part, and we've had some coaches on here. We've had Coach Cole on here, and he's the one who's, you know, known for the CEO, right? Being the CEO of his program. What was that learning curve like for you from going from a high school coach where it might be a little bit more hands-on with the technique, where college you have to be more like of a businessman and delegate?
Yeah, that was probably the hardest part, because I always said I always wanted to train. I always wanted to wrestle. I always wanted to drill. I never want to miss a practice. I have to be in the room. And that's still like that to this day. I still want to drill. I still want to be hands-on. I surrounded myself with some really big names in this sport: Donnie Pritzloff, Jeff Buck, all these guys who, you know, it just wasn't me doing the technique. We have a lot of guys now, our resident athletes. So, but yeah, like you mentioned, Coach Cole is really the poster child when you talk about a CEO and a great fundraiser and getting people to buy into a program. So I emulated a lot. I took from a lot of different coaches, their philosophies when it's come to fundraising and building a brand and a fan base. And the bottom line is it's just about hustling. And we hit the ground running. Coach Leonardis and myself, we visited 274 schools that first 6 months we got the job. And it was all about just building a fan base. And that led into fundraising and meeting very important people and building an RTC and making our wrestling camps really big. So a lot of that is listening to what Coach Cole has done. And there's some other coaches, Coach Smith at Missouri. There's been some really, really good ones that I've listened to and bought into some of their tactics going forward. But I still to this day feel like the wrestling part's the part I enjoy the most. I think the day I totally step back and don't want to be in the room and just want to be a fundraiser, for me, that'll probably be the day where I think it's time to let somebody else run the program. So still very, very important to me that head coach is in that room and running practices and allowing your assistants to do a whole heck of a lot, because I am surrounded by some great ones. So it's important for me to be around the wrestlers.
And it being around the wrestlers, you know, we've had some, as Jimmy mentioned, we've had some coaches like Coach Cole, we've had Coach Bono on, and some different coaches at Division II and junior college and stuff. What is the practice situation like at Rutgers? Are you guys still doing a traditional afternoon practice? Or are you doing individuals in the morning? Like, not to get too inside baseball with everything.
No. Great question. We changed our whole philosophy about 3 years ago. We started going to morning workouts, because if you think about it, the Big Ten tournament, it's a 9 o'clock start. The national tournament, it's a 10 o'clock start. Some of the major tournaments, the Midlands Championships, the Scuffle, Cliff Keen, all that is a morning start. Dual meets are at night, so we may vary and have some night workouts to simulate that. But for the most part, it's about we get our whole day done. By 1:30, kids can now start. Our student athletes can start their classes. but by 10, we usually practice at 10. And depending on when there's lifts, we have night lifts, but we have morning wrestling and then afternoon one-on-ones. And we're fortunate enough because we have that whole morning and we have a really good RTC with a lot of talent in there and a ton of coaches, we could split our room quite a bit. So we'll do a whole lot of different things where it's maybe 9 a.m. is a heavyweight workout, or injured guys who can't be on the mat, they're coming in early. And so we'll play with it a lot. It's never really the same thing, but for the most part, we train in the morning. So our guys take class at night so they can really concentrate on their morning routine, getting up, getting their bodies moving, and then coming in, getting a great workout to start their day. So that's changed the last 3 years. It's been the best thing we've done, I think, personally. So everyone's different though.
Yeah. When you're starting to program towards when you're competing, whether it be, you have a morning tournament, so you're getting those morning workouts in, or you have a night match, so you might get some night practices in. How much have you learned over the past 16 years as far as, there's a lot more that goes into coaching the college team. You can put way more time into that college team than the high school team because you don't have to teach classes, right? So how much of a learning curve has that been for you? And what has been some of the biggest things that you think have helped you as a coach?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, man. When you first start out, especially when you're in high school, it's about go, go, go. Just train, just work, just whether it's lift, whether it's a wrestler, everything's hard. And I've learned so much to adapt to just being better at the whole rest, being better at making sure the body's feeling good, making sure nutrition is so important, just as important as our training. It's what we're putting in our bodies and how we're fueling our bodies. So that's a huge part of our program is the nutrition package, our hygiene, our sleep habits, all that stuff matters. And I've learned a lot going through it. And as we get later in the year, our practices are really, really short. There's so much more we do in the morning as far as film study, and after a practice, bringing individuals in and having one-on-one dialogue, whether it's a film study, whether it's a philosophy, whether it's match tactics, or maybe it's academics or something like that. So there's a lot more we can do. So probably been the biggest thing is just having that time to really throw everything into your craft. And for me, it's motivating and getting guys to perform at the optimal level and making sure they're feeling good. But I learned that when I was at Jackson. It was one of the biggest calls I ever made was to Donnie Pritzloff. And it was when Scotty was in his junior year and Donnie was recruiting him, and he started to get maybe not worn down, but it was just go, go, go. And Donnie just mentioned how important rest was this time of year, going into districts, regions, and states. And you remember Scotty, he was chasing 4 state championships and all that good stuff. So that was really, really important. And now we've implemented it in our program where we don't even train on a Wednesday. Wednesdays are our off days, and your off day may be different than my off day. And I don't know if you got this earlier, but Nick Suriano wouldn't come around the facility on a Wednesday, and Anthony Ashdalt would do a double session. He would do a one-on-one, and then maybe he'd do a lift, or he'd do a one-on-one with a coach, whereas 40 minutes of technique, and then maybe he'd do a run in the afternoon. So every guy was different. Those two in particular got to their goals in different ways, but they went about it differently. And I think I've learned so much about resting the body and peaking it for the right times of years, the right time of year, and being good in March is super, super important. And listen, you know me, I'm into these dual meets and I want to win, but I've learned over the years, the dual meets are great. They build the fan base. Everybody can relate to it, but you better have results in March, especially in this state, if you're going to make it. So I had to learn quick, and it took a little bit, but I think we're in a good spot right now.
Mentioning that individualized programming, how key is that, and having the freedom to be able to do that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what it's about. The college athlete is different, right? These guys have been through this grind for a long, long time. And some of them are freshmen, some of them are 6-year guys. So you got to specialize each guy. Each guy is super different when it comes to it. Each guy goes about it a different way. And some bodies are a little bit beat up and banged up. So you got to be smarter with others. And I always said this to her, you can't have a coaching ego when it comes to that. It can't be, this is my way, this is the way we do things. You have to be able to adapt as a coach. to the needs of what your athletes need, especially if you want them to wrestle at a high level at the most important time. So that's something I think we've gotten really good at. This time of year we turn it up, but again, each guy goes through injuries, and what they need is really, really important. What they don't need is just as important. So that's something that I've learned. Again, it's each kid's different, and as I've gone through the years, I think we've gotten better at it.
And being in the Big Ten and the level of athlete that you're recruiting coming out of high school, do most of the guys that you're recruiting, do they kind of have a sense of that nutrition hygiene, the sleep hygiene? Are they hip to all that stuff, or you still have to kind of go through some growing pains with some young kids that just want to go that first year?
Oh no, there's no question about it. Those freshmen that come in have no idea about the whole nutrition, and we talk about it. You go to a recruit's house, and we did a home visit last night out in Ohio, and we talked about nutrition, and we talked about academics, and we talked about sleep habits and hygiene. That means nothing when you're on a home visit. It sounds great, but then you get these freshmen in here. We had some really good freshmen that have no idea what it's like to really put the right things in your body and to continue to drink water up until weigh-ins, basically, or maybe you're cutting out a little bit before weigh-ins, but you're drinking water, you're eating the night before. And I always tell the stories on recruiting trips, our best guys, the Ashnalts, the Surianos, the Delvecchios, the Theobalds of the world, they ate 3 meals a day. They might not have been the biggest meals, but they were eating throughout the day, and it never took away from their practices and their approach and their preparation. So that's a huge thing. It's probably the biggest, other than bottom wrestling and getting off the bottom, how they handle their diets and how they make weight, cut weight is the biggest adjustment for freshmen coming in. So there's no question. It doesn't matter how good you are. There's a learning curve when it comes to that.
Coach, you had just mentioned a handful of guys that were All-Americans for you. And at the beginning of this interview, you had mentioned those first 6 or 8 years not kind of doing the performances that you were looking for at the NCAAs. What was the difference between those first 6 to 8 years? Because you had talent, you had some good guys,
Yeah.
and then those other guys that broke through.
Yeah, I think to start, it was about, for me, it was basically just train hard. And I wasn't, just like we said earlier, it was just go. And I think rest became really, really important. That's something we needed to implement more of, making sure we were feeling better, and then just living a championship lifestyle throughout. And the bottom line is one guy broke through. Anthony Perotti in 2013, I think it was, or maybe 14. I kind of lose track of the years, but he broke through. He had an incredible run. He entered the tournament, the EIWAs at 8-8. He took 30 EIWAs. He broke through. And once he broke through, obviously, get Anthony Ashnalt to come to Rutgers was huge. But Perotti broke through, and then the floodgates open. It's been 2 All-Americans ever since. And now people in the room started believing we could do it. And we put so much emphasis on that tournament early on. And I say this everywhere I speak. If I could have, Winston, Aldi, and Langle, and Rinaldi, and Zanetti, and all those guys wrestling with us now, they'd be multiple-time All-Americans just by the way we approach it. And I think part of it for me was learning too. Part of it for me was understanding the college season is different than a high school season. There's 2 semesters. It's really 2 seasons. So it's certainly on me a little bit, and I always feel I kind of beat myself up for some of those guys in their careers, and I wish I could have all those guys now. But the bottom line, it was Anthony Perotti breaking through. It opened up the floodgates. We've had an All-American for multiple All-Americans for 9 straight years. So that's pretty important. When you have a guy in there and you see him do it, it makes it easier for everybody to want to do it.
Do some of those early guys understand their value and what their contribution was to the program, even though they may not have come away with it with an All-American certificate? Do they realize the impact that are they coming out to the matches, home matches and stuff now to be a part of what you got going on? Yeah.
It's awesome. They've all come back. They've all spoke to the team. They've all talked about the early days in College Ave. And now we have this brand new facility, which is one of the best and biggest in the country. And those guys started that. We wrestled the other night. We wrestled in front of 8,000 fans. When those guys started our first match, January 4th, 2008, we wrestled in front of 22 fans. So those guys were the ones that built it. Those guys were the ones that put in all that hard work and accepted all the things we were doing and the branding and the recruiting and helping with recruiting, helping with wrestling camps. And everywhere they went, they wore Rutgers wrestling gear, and they gave away T-shirts for me and did a whole heck of a lot for me. And they wrestled their tails off. Heck, we won some huge matches with those guys. We beat Lehigh. We beat Missouri, who I'm watching wrestle now. They're wrestling Iowa State right now. But when Missouri's fifth in the country, we beat those guys on a DJ Russo takedown. So there's so many big moments those guys were a part of, and I'm disappointed that they didn't get to see it through. We had 3 guys in the round of 12 in the blood round to be All-Americans, Scotty, Mario, and DJ, and just didn't punch through on that one national tournament. And so we were so close, and I just think that group kind of deserved it. But they put Rutgers wrestling on the map. There's no question about it. Every chance we get to bring those guys back, we do.
Coach, you just said you've had an All-American for the past 9 years. That is pretty impressive. Congratulations, because I remember the days before Scott Goodale was at Rutgers, and no one was going to Rutgers matches or cared about Rutgers for wrestling. And I hate to put it so harsh, but no one did. So congratulations on that. And mentioning all those guys, and I think it really needs to be emphasize how important, a bunch of those guys out of high school going to Rutgers was. Would Rutgers wrestling be where it is if Scotty Winston didn't go with you?
Oh man, no, there's no, I don't believe so. He was the first major recruit. I know everybody says, well, he was your guy because you coached him at Jackson, but Scotty could have went anywhere, Ohio State, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin. I only know that because I was going to go with him on those trips, because I was his high school coach in college football. And I wanted to go with him every single weekend. And when I got this job, and I was like, why would you want to go away? Why would you even want to take visits? So the tune totally changed, and it worked out. He trusted me. Obviously, I trusted him. To this day, super close. He just had a baby girl. So, we're very close with the family. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today without Scotty Winston, and Rutgers Wrestling wouldn't be where we're at today if he didn't trust all of us and really put his name on the dotted line and commit to this university. So I think all of our wrestlers know that now, but I think you're right. It needs to be mentioned. Scotty's a huge part of what we're doing here today.
Was that the hardest recruiting pitch you ever had to make?
That was actually not the hardest recruiting
No.
pitch. That was one of the easier ones. It's just him and I were super tight. So,
Right
but once he bought in, it was good. But there's a lot of love there, man. There's a lot of love. You know that.
So, Coach, we've kind of talked about starting the program and kind of how there had to be some key players to build that program, and you had to learn a little bit as a coach because there's a big difference between high school and college wrestling. Now, being 16 years in now, what is the trajectory going forward? What are you kind of focusing on, and what are some of the things that you put more emphasis on these days?
Yeah, right. That's a loaded question because it's a lot more than just academics and fundraising and recruiting. It's always going to be recruiting. It's the number one thing. We're at a point now where we're going to probably finish top 20, 22 in the country this year, and it's not a good year. We're at the bottom end of the Big Ten from a dual meet standpoint. But as of today, we're not where we need to be. We have to get better. And I've noticed it and felt it. I know there's expectations now. Everybody wants national champs now because we've done it. And then there's a huge expectation to be in the thick of it when it comes to dual meets in the Big Ten. It's no longer okay to lose close to Ohio State and Michigan and Iowa and Minnesota. We got to start winning those duels. So right now, that's the emphasis. We have to get better. We can't let this thing go backwards. And I understand that. I feel that. And I know this fan base, it's a rabid fan base, and it's knowledgeable, and they want to win, and they want to win at a high level. So that's the focus right now. And probably the biggest areas that you need to work on is your RTC, is your athletes, your resident athletes that are trying to win senior level competitions, Sebastian Rivera's of the world, guys like Kamal and Joey Silva that are in our RTC. They're a huge part of what we're doing. So there's a whole fundraising campaign for that because you got to keep workout partners. Guys like Jordan Pagano need to continue to work out with our guys. That's incredibly important. There's an arm race to have workout partners. And then there's this whole new thing, NIL, name, image, and likeness, where everybody coming out believes they deserve money, not scholarship money. They want extra spending cash. So that's a whole nother box that needs to be opened. And Rutgers is, I wouldn't say we're on the cutting edge. I think we're kind of behind, but we need to up our ante when it comes to NIL and when it comes to keeping guys and using it for recruiting and using it, because basically what it's turned into, it's more than just having 9.9 scholarships now. If you can get a ton of NIL money, you can use it towards, giving guys and having them come to Rutgers based on NIL. So that's a whole nother avenue. And then you got your budget, the budget that runs Rutgers wrestling. So there's 3 areas that need attention every single day. And that's kind of where I'm at today. That's kind of what I look at and what we meet. We go in every morning as a staff, we get in there early, and that's some of the things we're discussing along with academics and wrestling camps and scheduling. But NIL, resident athletes, and then it's important for us to see Sebastian, place the world championships and making Olympic games. That's really, really important for us. So we're in those stages now. And then, of course, we're preparing our guys for the Big Ten tournament. So a lot going on, but those are the areas that will always need our attention: recruiting, NIL, RTC, and your operating budget.
So with all that said,
A little more than just wrestling, right, Jimmy?
Way more than just wrestling, Coach.
Do you sleep?
I get a couple hours. I'm not a good sleeper, and when I get up at night, I have to write things down. Otherwise, it won't be there in the morning. So I do a lot of that, a lot of scribbling and Googling by myself, and then I get back to bed. But as long as I'm doing it to the best of my ability, I rest easy at night. And as long as I'm not leaving any stone unturned, I feel good about it. And I love where the program's at. I want to win at a higher level, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. You talk about recruiting and you talk about the RTC athletes and those guys. Is there a limit as to how many people you want to bring in the room? Are you looking to have, or at each weight class in terms of how many guys you're recruiting, or how's that work out for you guys?
Yeah, when it comes to workout partners, you'd like to get 7 or 8 guys in there to spread out the weights and things like that. But that's a financial thing, right? That's all about fundraising. And there's times you have to choose. Right now we have 4 athletes. Is that enough? Of course, I'd like to have more, but I also got to turn my attention towards NIL, towards recruiting these guys. And what becomes more important when you're recruiting a family? This is the $1 million question. What becomes more important to you? I'm going to give you money, so financially you're okay from a family standpoint, or I'm going to give you a workout partner where we think with the workout partners you can achieve all your goals. So every family is different. Some people they want money, they want college to be affordable for their family, which I get. And then some guys who have put their whole life into wrestling want to make sure they have a workout partner. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword. And again, we're fighting it every day, and it's a good fight. It's not a bad fight, but again, it's all about finances. It's all about raising money to bring, ideally it'd be 7 or 8 guys in your practice room.
Are you a fan of the NIL?
Am I a fan of it? I was
think it's good for the sport?
I believe our athletes should be compensated. I wish it would be done the right way, where businesses and our guys, the coaches aren't facilitating it. That was never the intent of the rule. That's something we have never done. But if somebody wants to sponsor a Joey Oliveri or an Anthony White or a Brian Soldano, oh man, I'm all for it. And we have a lot of our guys on some good NIL deals, and a lot of businesses will come to me and I'll put them in touch with people. But for the most part, I think coaches should stay out of it. And I don't think it should be used where, let me go get 50 grand so I can give it to a high school kid, because I'm under it's my understanding that you should have to win. You should have to earn it a little bit. And before you step on a Big Ten mat, I don't think you should have to earn something. So that's just my philosophy. And I don't know if that'll float as we get into this more, but that's just the way I feel now. And I just know I need to be prepared, because then you got guys that are becoming All-Americans and becoming national champs that are going to want some money too. So that's kind of where this is going. So I'm not a fan of that. I was a fan where it was about 2 years ago when businesses were getting involved, and it's kind of what we're doing now. Our guys are fortunate enough to be surrounded by season ticket holders that own businesses and want want our wrestlers on their Instagram and all that good stuff, and putting their name out there. So I'm all for that.
Yeah, it's very interesting how that is working out, because as someone from the outside, you hear that college wrestlers are going to get paid. You think it's great, but then you talk to the coaches and you find out some of the details. You're like, oh, this might make it a little bit harder for some of the recruiting processes. Before you said 22nd in the country right now, and it's a down year. And again, it's funny because back in the day, 22nd in the country would have been a real good thing for Rutgers. Are you catching heat from the fans right now? Because you mentioned getting some heat.
I've been catching heat I was at Jackson for 11 years. I was at Rutgers. I've been catching heat for 27 years. And that's good. That's good. There's expectations. I love it. That means they care. And listen, I did wrestle when I was at Jackson, right? There wasn't social media. Everybody has an opinion now. Everybody can say whatever they want to say, and it's okay. So whatever. You hear that saying, right? Even bad news is news, right? So whatever. If they're talking about Rutgers wrestling, I get it. Where there's smoke, there's fire. They're not all wrong, and I don't read all the crap, right? I don't do message boards. I don't do forums. But social media is a real thing. People aren't afraid to tag you and post you when you haven't won or things like that. So yeah, there's no question. Our fan base wants to see us do better. Our fan base wants us to compete in the Big Ten. We do a great job outside the conference. We were 8-1 this year outside the conference, but if they want to see us compete for Big Ten championships, it's crazy. So that's great. There's expectations there. And as the head coach, I invite that stuff never, it doesn't, I don't lose sleep over it. I get it. I understand there's frustration. And I'll also back our guys too. When people are wrong, you're wrong. And, I won't do it. People need to understand really what's going on. So there's a lot more that goes into it behind the scenes that not everybody sees. And we got a great group of guys that work their tail off, that live and breathe this sport. So yeah, with anytime there's success, people don't want to see that. Right? People are willing, not everybody, but man, I've got some friends that want to see you lose. So that's just part of it. That's all good. That's part of it. And that's the truth. That's the truth. Some people that have been close to me that aren't afraid to see us lose. So I get that. That comes with the territory. That just means there's been success and there's expectations behind it. And I'm all for that. And it's better than nobody caring at all. And when they're not talking Rutgers wrestling, that's not good either.
Coach, I think it was you who said it once. You still might have been at Jackson, or you might have just taken over at Rutgers, but you was at a clinic once and you said, good or bad, you're still talking about me. So as long as they're talking about you,
that's true.
You're in their forefront. So, that's a good thing.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's true, man. I live by that. That's definitely true. And now I'm all for that.
Coach, who do the fans of Airey Bros Radio need to be watching coming with the Big Ten's coming up and with the national tournament? We know Dean Peterson's doing a pretty good job, but we know you got another 25-pounder there. Who do people need to be watching? Who do you think the sleepers are?
I think Dean could have a really good run here. I really do. I think he's young, so when he starts truly believing in where he's at and his training, and he works super hard, I think he can make would not shock me one bit if he made a run in March here at the national tournament. Guys like Joey Heilman, he's a 6-year guy, so a little bit different than Dean. He's been through this, and he's such a professional. And he was at North Carolina, and now he's a grad student for us. But he's been to the national tournament. He's won a ton of matches there. So, again, wouldn't shock me one bit. Joey Oliveri has been to the national tournament, won a bout there last year. Billy Janzer, who's going to have to probably qualify himself through the Big Ten tournament. He won't get a nod unless he does it by himself. So, Brian Soldano, super exciting. He's a freshman, leads our team in pins, very, very, very dangerous, always in a match. 3-time state champ from High Point. He was the guy I was thinking to when it's been a long year for Brian, and he's never faced this much competition. He's always walked through New Jersey, and this has been hard, but he's dealt with losses really, really good. So I expect him to do some big things at the Big Ten and national tournament. So those are some of the guys off the top of my head. Jackson Turley's a former All-American. If he can get hot, can beat anybody. But our heavyweight is ranked in the top 20 in the country and back from an injury. Boo McDermott. So those guys I think can all win matches. It's about getting through the Big Ten tournament, because once you go to nationals, believe it or not, it's I feel really good about where our guys are at, and you just got to be able to navigate that Big Ten tournament. That's always been, wrestling great there and getting through that tournament and be ready for the nationals.
You're talking about the Big Ten, coach. It's quite it's almost like a mini national tournament. It's almost like if you place in the top 3, 4, 5, 6 in some weight classes, you're almost like you're on that All-American trajectory. A hot topic the last couple of years has been the backslide medical forfeit sort of stuff.
Yep.
And I know, Sebastian had to deal with that last year. There was a couple guys. Obviously, there's certain situations that he bounced back and fought through that. Overall, though, what are your thoughts on that sort of stuff? I mean, sometimes it's necessary, but
yeah. Listen, I've been around. I've been in this conference long enough now. I've been around these coaches. They're the most competitive people in the world, and I mean that. I truly mean that. Nobody wants to forfeit out. No, but there's gamesmanship to it. Nobody's ducking anybody. They're protecting their student athlete. I'll speak for the Rutgers staff and myself. We didn't want Sebastian to forfeit, but he got a surgery 2 weeks earlier, so that was always the plan. And he started feeling really good and felt maybe we should wrestle Ironman in that Big Ten semi, but just stuck to the plan. So the national tournament or the sport allows you to do it without really getting penalized. So every coach is going to protect their student athlete. But I can tell you at the Big Ten tournament, you'll see it again this year. Guys will, whether it's a semi-slide, whether it's a forfeit of the finals, just to get healthy. We all understand the system, all understand ways to navigate the system. And sometimes, and the fans don't like to hear this, sometimes it's resting your student athletes so they're at the best last 3 days of March. I've always said you need to make the dual meets important. The dual meet should have a national championship behind it. The national individual tournament should be just that, an individual national tournament. So I think until we see that change, you probably are going to see the same things happening with forfeits and, not seeing great matchups. Heck, we had to do it the other night. Our 84-pounder is really banged up, and it's a match he needed. He needed to wrestle against Nebraska, but he's really banged up. The dual meet was out of hand, and we forfeited. I forfeited twice. And I know the fans want to see Soldano versus Pinto. I've got a lot of heat for that, but it was what was best for Brian Soldano, and we needed that match. So, but that's the way it is. It doesn't really hurt, except for not getting a better seed at the Big Ten tournament.
Right.
And I think
your perspective.
I know as fans, you probably guys want to see the best matches, right? That probably kills you to see the forfeits but
no, I mean, it's in a situation where you kind of are, at least some Sebastian a little bit, or Steve and that sort of stuff. You know what he's dealing with. I think it comes, like you were saying before, where like the health hygiene, the nutrition, the strength and conditioning, like everything is on a different level. And I think some people are just they have like that old school kind of Iowa or Oklahoma State mentality where like, guys have the gable wrap, their ears are taped up, knees and everything. And so, but I'm a big fan of smarter, not harder. And like you said, what matters most for the athlete and especially for the program and the notoriety is what happens in those 3 days in March. So I get it.
Good.
Coach, would you like to see 2 separate seasons, a dual season and a tournament season?
I don't know if I'd want 2 different seasons. I would like one semester. I would like the first tournament of the year to be the Midlands or the Scuffle or, something late, December to start the year. And now it's a 1 semester sport. I think that would be better. You get your individual national tournament away from March Madness a little bit if you're wrestling in April. So I think that's something all the coaches have been really shooting hard for. And then for me personally, and I'm probably in the majority, we want a dual meet championship, and the reasons there isn't one is because of what we've been talking about. Some coaches think it's too much getting closer to March, so I get that. But you're crowning a national championship, if the NCAA president is handing over a trophy to the dual meet championship, everybody would be on board. And then a month later, you go to an individual tournament. That's how I would see it in a perfect world. Not necessarily two seasons, but certainly make dual meets matter. I think you'd see great matchups during the year, and you see the top 24 teams. So you're fighting to get in the tournament. And for someone like, I think of some of the smaller schools, making the tournament's a big deal. It's kind of like college basketball, but they're in the national tournament from a dual meet standpoint. So in a perfect world, I think I'd like to see that. And then you're still going to crown your individual All-Americans, your 8 All-Americans, and you could still keep a team score and make it an NWCA award that you're handing out on the big stage at the end. But because the NCAA will not give out 2 championship trophies. So, which again is weird to me, but whatever. It's a whole nother topic, but that's how I would like to see it in a perfect world. And that's just me. And I think our national tournament is the best thing in the sport. I think it's bigger than the Olympics in some cases. More people have eyeballs on the NCAA wrestling championships than anything else in our sport. So I'm not saying I want to change that whatsoever. There's nothing like it. But I do think dual meets need to matter. And I think everybody can relate to a really good dual meet.
Yep.
Absolutely. We were supposed to open up with this one, but I forgot it. Coach, I think I already know the answer to this one. Is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
Pork roll, egg, and cheese.
Let's go.
Pork roll, egg, and cheese. Yep.
Yeah, we had Coach Ayers on, and it was right after you guys had a dual meet with them. You had separate lines for pork roll, and you had a separate line for Taylor ham, and the pork roll. And,
he's the Taylor
run
ham
away
guy
with it. Yeah, yep.
Ayers is the Taylor ham guy. Yeah, I know. Yep.
Springsteen or Bon Jovi?
Springsteen. I'm going to see him April 14th.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Jenks or Seaside?
Oh man, I live right before the beach right now. Right before the bridge in Seaside Park. So I go there all the time, but I grew up going to Jenks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Coming up in Jackson, Six Flags, yay or nay?
Yes. Stuck into it my whole childhood. Under the fence, through the swamps, got in for free every time.
Okay. Yeah, last one for Jersey specific. Where's your favorite place to get a slice?
Ooh, Linda's in Tom's River. Incredible. Linda's.
Okay.
Best place down the shore. There's no doubt about it. That's my opinion, but.
Okay. All right. I'll be home in April. I'm going to put it on my list.
All right. It's really good, man. Really good. So many different kinds to do. Incredible.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Coach, is it state or states?
It's states. Oh man, we were out in Ohio yesterday, and they call it state, and they call it California kids, because we have a couple on our team. They call it I'm wrestling 160s down at state. I'm like, what does that mean? It's you're wrestling 160 at the states.
You just answered our next question. Yeah. Is it 60s or 60?
It's 60. You go 160. Go 125. That's the weight.
Yep. Coach, is it stance in motion or stance end motion?
Stance in motion. Oh man, that's a stance N with just the N. Stance and motion.
Okay.
Coach, you get the coin flip. It's Rutgers' choice. Are you deferring, or do you have a go-to what you're doing, or does it depend on what's going on in the match?
It really depends on what's going on. It really depends. There's a lot of dialogue that goes into that. I like to build a lead, so if we're winning, go down. If we could go down, but man, top game's the X factor. So there's a lot of times we defer, and if we have to go neutral in the third period, all depends on the athlete.
Coach, would you like to see a push out in college?
No. All regular stalling.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Regular stalling?
Yeah.
Are there any rules you'd like to see changed?
Any rule changes?
Yeah.
Get rid of the headgear. Get rid of ankle bands. Those are little ones, but I'm trying to think. I wouldn't mess with the scoring. I like riding time. I know there's been a lot, you should have to turn somebody to get riding time. I don't know. I think just call regular stalling, and then you hit the top guy, hit the bottom guy. But there's an art to riding, so I'm a fan of riding time.
What's your favorite wrestling shoe of all time, and what are you wearing right now?
Well, I have to wear Adidas. I'm sponsored by Adidas. Rutgers is sponsored by Adidas, so we wear Adidas. My favorite one of all time. Remember the Ultra Flex, Asics Ultra Flex? That was probably my favorite.
Okay.
Red ones, red and silver.
Coach, doing away with the ankle bands, would you be in favor of something like the freestyle circuit where you have like a section of the singlet that is green and red, or would you just say do away with all that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't. I think the slits are. I like a normal university singlet. I wouldn't do red. To do this in the Big Ten, we talk to each other before and say, "Listen, we're wearing red." It's the weirdest thing is when two schools show up and they're both wearing black singlets, or they're both wearing white singlets. Just communicate, and whatever the home team's wearing, you do the opposite.
Are you a fan of the portal?
Oh man, that's a loaded question, man. I don't want to get in trouble. That's a loaded question. If it benefits Rutgers wrestling, I'm a huge fan of it. But
okay.
I just think I get it. You know, coaches leave, so kids should be. So here's what we had our discussion the other night. This is a really good question. I think if a coach leaves, a kid should be able to transfer as well. But if you just leave because you didn't make the spot or there should be some type of penalty. You should have to sit a certain amount of time. Just getting up nowadays, you don't even have to talk to the coach. All you have to do is communicate with the compliance officer. Say, listen, I want to go in a portal. Done, gone. Nothing. We had a kid leave halfway through this year, a really good kid. He didn't even have to talk to me. He did because we have a relationship, but he didn't even have to. And there's nothing. He's like, I hope you would do everything to make this easier. There's nothing I could do. You can go as long as you want. You can pick up and go whenever you want. And then there's points where you could not only pick up and leave, you could pick up and wrestle against the team you left. That's crazy to me. So I think there needs to be a little bit of rules. It's the wild, wild west right now, man.
Yeah.
That portal will be banging come March 20th.
Right on.
No.
Coach, are you a coffee drinker?
I am. Two cups a day.
How do you brew it? How do you take it?
How do I take it?
Yes.
My wife makes it, so I've never really made it. Or I go to Dunkin' Donuts and I just cream.
All right.
Okay. Coach, do you have any
Dunkin' over Starbucks?
Dunkin' over Starbucks? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Coach, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Scott Goodale?
I talk to my team every day before practice. Talk to them every day. Give them the plan. Always give a plan. And then I always stress every single day, energy and enthusiasm, two things you can control, and just control it every day. They will never, ever know if I'm having a bad day. And I take a lot of pride in that. So 16 years at Rutgers, 11 at Jackson, not one time I've walked in. And I could have been having a terrible day, but I will never let them know. When I get in that restaurant room, there's nothing like it. So I just want to bring that energy every day and make sure they feed off that. And then that's just how I live my life, energy and enthusiasm every single day.
Do you have any kind of tips for like when you're having a bad day, how to bring that energy? Because I try to be that guy, but I'm not as good as you at it.
No, I'm not saying I'm great at it. To me, I have to give these guys, I know how hard this sport is, and I think they deserve our best every single day. So that's when I walk in that room, I throw everything I got going on. I leave it. I try to the best of my ability to leave it at the door. And our guys know, they know when I'm stressing. They know, especially like right before a match, if somebody's struggling with weight or things like that. So that's when I really get uptight. But I try to throw everything out the door, whether it's, your marriage, whether it's your job, whether it's your kids, whatever's going on. I got 2 hours, and it's never 2 hours, but hour and a half to give to these guys. And it's going to be the best hour and a half I could possibly give them. And that's just how I live it. And I've always been taught that, and I've always lived by that. And, whether it was coach football, softball, even golf, I'm going to give these guys the best and my attention for the most part. Everything, my attention is what they need. And that's just how I go about it.
Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate and need to hear that sometimes. What are you listening to right now? Music,
Yeah.
podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Not reading. No, I've gotten. I haven't read a book in a while. I'm big into Todd Durkin. You know who Todd Durkin is?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you guys know Durkin? He's from Brick, now lives
Yeah.
out in San Diego,
San
but he's
Diego.
a motivational. Yeah, I grew up playing football with him. Now he's world renowned, trains all the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he writes these books all the time. So he sends me all his books, but look him up. Great podcast, Todd Durkin. He's awesome. So I listen to him a lot. Music wise, it's a lot of Chesney right now, a lot of Bruce because I'm getting ready for his shows. That's about it. Our room changes. I don't really get to control the room. When it comes to music, our guys do that, and that's okay. But yeah, that's just it. Just living this good life down the water, man. There's nothing like it.
Coach, last one for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
You mean like sweets and things like that?
Sweets, so
Music.
savory, you know, something. I know you mentioned you had a bottle of wine when you made out your five.
Yeah.
Plan.
I do. I like to sip on some wine. I like when I golf. I love the golf.
Okay.
So I'll smoke a cigar when I golf. I enjoy smoking a cigar when I golf. That's one thing I like to do.
Okay.
So that's probably my guilty pleasure right there.
Do you have a humidor? Are you that into
I do.
it?
I have a humidor, and I have a place right down the street here on Fisher, right near that Linda's pizza place. But I have a cigar shop there. I'll go sit in there, and I got to be friends with all the old time guys. I'm now a wrestling fan, so that's pretty cool. And I get away there, but I bring some back, put them in my humidor, and when I go golf, I'll enjoy one a lot. So I become probably the last 5 or 6 years I've gotten into them. It's pretty cool. Relaxes me.
Yeah. Where's your go-to course?
I play Pine Barrens. That's my home course.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
What's your handicap?
So, yeah. I'm afraid to tell you this, but it's pretty low. I was down to a 3 this summer,
wow.
but I'm a 5 now. I ended up at a 5 because I was tired of losing money, so I purposely got myself up to a 5. But I don't want the fans out there to think that all I'm doing is golfing. I do raise a lot of money though on the golf course. So, but yeah, I got to be pretty good. I got it down to a 3, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, because you were a pretty good golfer in high school, right?
I did play in high school. Yeah, the golf coach let me travel to wrestle. So he's like, whenever you want to go wrestle. But we'd love for you to come out and play. So I was like, yeah. So I stopped playing baseball and I wrestled I played football, but I wrestled all year round and golfed in the spring. It was awesome.
Were you like
and then I coached it when I went back. No, that was Jody Scott. Remember Jody Scott? He wrestled for Brick Memorial.
Oh, okay.
He won the Ocean County tournament.
Okay.
Yeah, he won the Ocean County tournament. But I made the short conference tournament every year, and then when I coached it, that was the worst job ever because the guys were they were better than me, and I hated it. So I'm like, these guys were beating me, right? So I was like, I only did that for 2 years. I have to play more. So I just started playing a whole heck of a lot.
Right on.
Coach, first and foremost, thanks for your time tonight. It was really an honor. We've talked to some bigger names, and this was really big for me. I don't know if you remember, but if it wasn't for you, I never would have met Mike Mal, never would have wrestled at Middlesex. Yeah. You were the one who gave me that push and introduced me to Mike. And the Airey Bros have been fans of Rutgers Wrestling since 2008, and we think it's absolutely amazing what you've done. And no matter where we go, whether it be UNC matches, we went to school mine matches last year, we're always letting people know we know Scott Goodale. So keep it up and keep repping New Jersey because you're doing a great job, Coach.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks you so much for having me. I miss you guys. And this has been really cool, man. Some pretty cool questions. And I was glad we were able to do it tonight. I apologize for the choppy feet at the beginning there, but yeah, all good, man. I appreciate all your support, and we're going to get this thing better. I can promise you that.
Heck yeah. Coach, good luck with the rest of your season. We'll be rooting for you at Big Ten and NCAAs.
All right, cool, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Have a good night, Coach.